Imagine that you have a magic marker. It looks like the usual whiteboard companion, but it has a secret that only you know about. You see, with this marker, you can go into any store, pick any item off the shelf, and write your own price on it. And when you go to the checkout, they accept your price, no matter what it is, and everybody walks away happy. Pretty neat, right? Well, where can you get this magic marker? Go to valiantgrowth.com/magic. Okay. Actually, you already own it. It's called creativity. It's called adventurousness or flexibility. With these tools, you can name your own price for almost anything, especially travel. Hello and welcome to Valiant Growth, the podcast that empowers you to earn self-esteem, build amazing relationships, and achieve freedom through radical personal development. I'm your host, Philip Frey, and today we're going to talk about a great strategy for frugal travel for the bold and the time rich. Travel is a prominent goal for most people in the personal development community, and while travel in itself isn't personal development, many people have found the change in surroundings to be a powerful stimulant of creativity, finding new angles on old problems, inspiration, and introspection. That is why it's an important topic for Valiant Growth, especially how to do it in a way that is light on your finances. Burning through your savings can take the fun out of a lot of things, travel included. I've talked previously about my own story of hitchhiking through Europe, both as a part of an interview on radical personal finance, which went into a lot more strategies and has been released just before this episode on the feed, and also in episode 32 of Valiant Growth. At the end of that episode, I invited listeners to get in touch if they have an interesting and informative story to tell. And that's the offer that Nicolas, a listener and a supporter of the show, has taken on, and he's got a strategy that I'm convinced many of you will find quite appealing. Nicolas, welcome to the show, and let's hear your story.
I was interested in traveling by bike. Since a young age, I had people around me who were doing it, and it seemed like a fun way to travel and be outside all day and that kind of thing. So a couple of years ago, I decided to take 2 months and ride my bike through France, Switzerland, and a part of Italy. And the way I did it is, first of all, using your bike for traveling is not per se a frugal thing to do. It can be very expensive. For example, a lot of people are using a very minimalist approach. They travel with their bike and they use their credit card to go to a hotel at night and have a good meal. So it can be a pretty expensive. But if you do what I did, which is ask people along the way if you can camp or on their in their field or in their backyard for the night, you can basically spend almost no money beside your food and maybe the odd museum visit or something like that. And so that's what I did in Europe, and great experiences. You meet a lot of people. You have a lot of addresses a lot of people to write to when you come back home, and it's all spontaneous. Nothing is planned. There's no online connection that you have to make in advance. You basically go where you want to go and ask people, that you meet along the way.
Yeah, it sounds like a very interesting strategy to me, and it caught my eye because I think there are some very clear advantages compared to hitchhiking and couchsurfing, because you have your own transport. I guess you have a lower range, but you do have your own transport. And this way of talking to people seems very organic, if a little bit unusual. How did you come up with it? What's the origin story with it?
I had a teacher in college that was doing that kind of travel for a long time, and he explained to us what he did. He showed pictures. And that really, gave me the push, and I saw that it was possible. It's funny because just this week I saw a video online of an interview with Steve Jobs. Maybe you've seen it. It's Steve Jobs talk about when he was 12 years old. He called Bill Hewitt from Hewlett-Packard, which was a big company, and he was an engineer at that company, a founder. And he just called him at his house and asked him for some processors or parts for an experiment. And this big CEO just said, sure, yeah, come over. And they ended up forming a bond, and Steve Jobs ended up working for HP at a young age. And so that was part of his old thing. So, and Steve Jobs, his lesson is said, well, just ask. I mean, people don't ask. So if you just pick up the phone that day and did what 99% of the people didn't do, and he got great results. So that reminded me of that way of traveling with your bike. The way I would do it is you want to be in a rural area, because obviously if you're in a super nice suburb where people really pay attention to all the details and they drive nice cars, you're kind of not that you're not welcome, but these kind of people don't want a tent in their backyard, and it's just not something that would work. So what I would do is you select a nice rural area where there's farms and agriculture and that sort of thing. And around 5 p.m. I would just look around and see if I was kind of lazy. I could have knocked on doors, but I was waiting for people to be outside, and it's a more natural approach. So I would just talk to them and say, hey, I'm Nicola, I'm from Canada. I'm just visiting your area. I have a small tent. I have a little stove, and would it be okay if I pitch my tent in your field or in your backyard for the night? And nobody said no. Nobody turned me down. I mean,
nobody.
No. Well, there was one time the guy was not the owner. He was the kind of real estate guy who was there for some type of work. So he said, no, you can't stay here. But he was technically not the owner. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just, and the stories I get from that type of travel is crazy. Once I was in Les Ouches, which is in France in the Alps, and I was riding my bike and I could hear a lot of dogs barking. So there was some kind of husky tour guide guy who was living in that area. So I said, that's interesting. So I decided to follow the little road and to get to near his house. And there I see the guy who is taking care of all these dogs, and I just talk to him and say, yeah, I'm visiting your areas, and your dogs are nice, and wow, it's so cool. And I ended up staying there a week because he was he said, yeah, you can camp. And then we talked, and he said, well, I'm training my dogs this week, and I could use some help if you want to stay. So I ended up staying in his house with his wife, and they gave me a guest bedroom, and we ended up sharing meals. So that was a cool story. Other time, it's just people saying, yeah, sure, and asking you, well, you might want to take a shower. So, or just open that door and there's a bathroom there, and I'll put a fresh towel in it. So, all kind of one woman packed me a lunch for the next day. So in the morning, she gave me this little brown bag and she said, oh yeah, I made lunch for my kids. I made an extra one for you, and have a good one. And so if you approach people, directly, and you just ask for something like that, and it's true in France, it's true in Switzerland, it's true in Italy. So people are willing to help, and they're curious to hear about your journey and what you have to say. So yeah, you don't spend any money for your transportation. You don't spend any money for your accommodation. And at the end, you're basically buying food, and you can buy food at the big supermarkets and go for what's on sale. So at the end of the day, you spend almost what you would have spent at home or less, basically. So yeah, that's how I did it.
Interesting. Did you stick to the French-speaking parts of these countries, or did you always speak the native language?
No. In France, of course, it was easier. And in France, they really like Canadians and French Canadians, because they always have this idea that they want to visit and see, the French part of North America. So that was obviously a plus. But in Italy, I didn't speak Italian at all, and so I would use a bit of English, a bit of French, and you can usually get what you want using that. I have a funny story also. I had read that in Italy you can go to a church and ask for the priest and tell them that you're traveling in the area and you don't have a lot of money. And I read that they sometimes have rooms or some type of accommodation that they can put at your disposal for free. So I was curious to try that. And one night I went to Aosta, which is a city in northern Italy, and I just saw a church, and I went there, spoke to the priest, and he spoke a little bit of French. And I said, I'm traveling, just for one night. Do you have like some type of bed or just a room that I could use? And he said, sure. And he showed me this small room with 3 beds in it, and it was empty. And so I thought to myself, wow, I just hit the jackpot, because after a week or two sleeping in your tent, a real bed is kind of nice. So I was pretty happy about that. But at around 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., the door opens, and it's the priest, and he has a guy that another guy wants to use the room too. So in come this guy who's like a homeless person who's smoking, one cigarette after another and speaking, to himself. And so that really changed in the atmosphere on a dime. And so I spent the night basically just breathing in smoke in this little room, and this guy would not talk to me, and I don't think I slept very well that night. So yeah, in theory, you can go to a church and find accommodation, but for that little experience, I tried to avoid doing that after. Maybe I was just unlucky, and you can get good experiences, but it's worth trying in these parts. Just ask and you see what you can get.
So how long was this trip, and what part of the year was it in?
It was for 2 months, and it was in September and October.
Yeah, that's very close to mine.
Yeah, so your journey, yeah, it's not too hot, and but it's just there's something about people traveling on their bike. It's you kind of deserve the scenery that you see. You've worked hard to see it, and somehow I think it works on psychological level with people. They don't see you as a big tourist who's coming in and taking pictures and coming out. They're really they see that it's hard and that and they want to help you. So that's what. And sometimes people would say, "Where are you going next?" I was like, "Well, I'm kind of going toward that direction." Oh, my sister-in-law lives in that town, so let me call her. And then, okay, next thing I know, I had this address and I could go over there, and she was waiting for me. Or or this family would take me on a little fishing expedition because they wanted to show me the type of fish that they had in the area. So a lot of little things like that happened it's weird. I think most people don't experience it because the normal reflex is to go to campgrounds because that's what you do when you're traveling. But with this little travel hack, if you will, it opens a door, and the possibilities are just endless. I mean, I'm sure if your listeners, I'm sure some of your listeners have tried it or will try it, and they will have a complete other stories to tell, other experiences. So, yeah, so that's basically it.
Yeah, I think one thing in common is that the kindness, the almost unexpected kindness of people that you encounter on the road is very surprising, especially when you're coming from a position of vulnerability. Because I think we had similar reactions because we weren't biking, but hitchhiking is not long distance, and couch surfing isn't the easiest thing in the world either, and that arose some sympathy in people as well, and that is I think that's a very nice touch. It gave me confidence in humanity for sure. My own trip.
Yeah, and another thing I noticed is that one night I would sleep in the backyard of a farmer who would talk to me about what he does and all that. And the next night I will sleep in the backyard of a retired physician and who would talk to me about the region and all that. So you can get to see the region through totally different eyes according to the people you meet along the way. And to me, it's just a very rich way to see an area, and so yeah. I mean, one day also when I started my trip, I started in Paris, and one morning I was at the Gare de Lyon train station with my bike and panniers and whatnot. So it's a pretty I felt pretty different from all the workers who were going to work that day. And one guy stopped and said, "Wow," he looked at my bike and all that, and he said, Where are you going?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm going to travel, and I don't really have a plan." And he said, "Are you going to the south of France?" I said, "Well, I might, go there in a month or so. I'm not sure." So he gave me his address. He's like, "Yeah, me and my wife would like to travel with our bikes too. So if you're ever in our area, let us know." And about a month later, I was in that area. So I called them the day before or something like that. And I said, "Well, hi, I'm the guy you saw at the train station a month ago for about 25 seconds. And I'm not far from your house." And so yes, I ended up speaking with them, and they say, sure. We won't be there tomorrow at 5 p.m. to welcome you, but come to our house, and the neighbor will show you in. And I'm like, okay, well, to myself, I was saying, well, I'll just wait for them to arrive. I won't, show myself in, and I ended up, I get at the house and I sit down, drink some water and relax. And not 5 minutes later, the neighbor comes in running and say, "Oh, you're the cyclist. Oh, yeah. So sorry. Here's the key." And she unlocked the house, and I was by myself in that house for like 2 hours, and just sitting, and I wouldn't even open the fridge. I was like, I would just ate my food. And so they ended up arriving from work, and they were sorry they couldn't welcome me. So that was a bit different because they themselves were travelers and had travel extensively through Europe and Africa with their bikes. I ended up staying with them 2 or 3 days. We biked in the area, and so that was a lot of fun. But you're right with the kindness of strangers, and I've experienced it over and over. Even in the U.S., I've traveled here in Vermont, not very far from Quebec, and you always think the Americans are very protective of their piece of land, and they're suspicious of people they don't know. But I've experienced the total opposite. I mean, people have said yes over and over. Some people say, yeah, come take a shower in the morning if you want. And I guess it's just something that it's in the blind spot of a lot of people that you can do these kind of things. And when you do them, it's really eye-opening.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about tactics. What was on you? What kind of bike did you have? What kind of tent did you have? What were the things that were most useful to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I had a mountain bike, and I used some. Mountain bike usually come with these big tires that are not very suited for road travel. So I used slick tires that were much more adapted to pavement. And I had panniers, 4 of them, with my little tent. I had a little camping stove that could work with a different type of fuel. And basically my sleeping bag. And I would say that maybe one of the main thing is you have to have panniers. You can't have a backpack. I would imagine maybe some people would say, oh, yeah, I have a bike, or I can find a bike, and yeah, I have a backpack. Why not just throw everything in the backpack and ride? And you will really hate life if you do that. It's just not suited for carrying a heavy load over hundreds of kilometers. So having panniers really help. And the first week you do it, it's basically hell, because no matter how in shape you are, your body is just not used to do that type of exercise for 8 hours a day. So, but once you go through that first week, it's funny, your body adapts. I guess your body just says, oh, I guess this is what we're doing now. We're not sitting in a chair. We're on a bike all day. Okay, I might as well step up my game, and you get in shape really quickly and doing that. So the equipment is, you can get it secondhand, and the good thing is also it keeps its value. Usually, if you buy secondhand panniers and you use them for a couple of years, my guess is you could sell them pretty much for the price you paid for them. So that's true for, I think, most camping gear. If you take good care of it, can go a long way. So yeah,
these go on the wheels, right? Or kind of.
Yes. You have like a kind of rack that you put in front, and a rack in the back, and they can clip there, and they stay in place. And so yeah, and a little tent, stove I mentioned already, a little mattress for sleeping. But I mean, you sometimes see cyclists with all these super nice specialized gear, expensive gear, and yes, it works. But I mean, a wool sweater works as well or even better than a polar fleece that you could pay hundreds of dollars for. So basically, you need to prepare for rain and that type of thing. But it doesn't have to be super expensive or super specialized. Besides the panniers and maybe the tent, these type of things. So yeah, and I was lucky. I ended up having only two two flats. I changed the tube like twice in almost 2,000 kilometers. So so I was lucky that way. But and also, in Europe, people are generally very cool with cyclists, and they will give you a lot of room when they pass, like the drivers. I heard horror stories like, oh, in Italy you'll see the drivers are crazy and they'll try to push you off the road, but it's not what I experienced at all. I had a lot of I never felt threatened or that my safety was in question because of the drivers and the traffic. Another tactic that I would suggest would always take the longest road to go where you want to go, because the way the human mind works is when we look at a map from point A to point B, we'll after a while we'll try to find the easiest solution, and if you're on a bike, you want a flattest solution as well. And usually that solution is using a main road. And if you're not careful, after a few days of your trip, you'll end up making these decisions because it seems more logical. But that's a recipe for really hating your trip, because you'll end up with more car traffic, more trucks. The scenery will not be as good. So I would always remind myself to always take the smallest road possible. And in France and in all these areas, it's obviously the nicest road. I mean, you see almost ducks in the middle of the road. Sometimes you would see these little towns that have not changed in 400 years. So it might take an extra day to go where you plan on going, but your trip will be much more rich and if you follow that advice. And last thing I would say is you need to write a journal. You need to write something every day in a little notebook, even if it's just one page, or one paragraph. And the reason is that being in a trip like that is so different from our daily lives that after a while you kind of you're so immersed into it, and you don't realize it anymore that you're living in this parallel world, if you will. So if you write down your thoughts and what happened during your day, you'll read it later, a year later or more, and you'll instantly be reliving this day and this challenge that you were trying to overcome. So it's really like nothing else when you read about that, and you'll remember these little details, fondly, the good and the bad. So even if it's just one paragraph a day before crashing in your bed at night, it's really makes a lot of a good souvenir to carry with you after the trip has ended.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I've done it, but I'll do it in the future. But I get even a similar thing even from pictures. But I'm sure that having your thoughts down, or maybe take a video, right?
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, sure.
That would be nice to have. How physically fit would someone have to be to undertake this?
Yeah, obviously, if you have, if you don't, if you never exercise, and if you never do these type of things, it might be rough. I would say, I'm not overweight. I've never been. I've been always in normal, good shape. Nothing too crazy. I've never trained for this or do anything like that. But from what I saw on the road and from what I experienced, if you have a basic level of fitness and you can walk, let's say you can walk 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers without without being too tired and all that. I would say that's a good sign that you're ready for that. The good thing with the bike is you're your own boss, and if in one day you do 5 kilometers, it's because you decided to do it. If one day you do 75 kilometers, it's because you decided to do it. It's so it's very flexible in that way. But of course, I wouldn't try to start a trip in the French Alps right away, because you might be in for a rough ride. My longest day in terms of exercise and was in between Switzerland and Italy. I climbed the Col du Grand Saint Bernard, and so it's where the Saint Bernard dogs are from in the Alps. So that day it was 40 kilometers of straight uphill climb, and that was a very rough day. There's a monastery at the top, and they welcome travelers. So I slept there for a night or two. No, 2 nights actually, because I was too tired the next day. But the good thing is the next day after that, I got to ride down on the Italian side, and that day was 40 kilometers of downhill ride. And so for 40 kilometers, you don't use the pedal once, you just use the brakes, and that was pretty rewarding feeling to do. But other than that, I didn't really have an issue, medical issues or fitness issues. But you do get in shape. I mean, it's quite stunning. I mean, I would come back and here and just ride with my friends, and of course, you're used to riding a bike that's heavy because of the load and the panniers and all that. And then when you ride your bike, just your bike empty like that, you basically do what you want. So you get so in shape. Another option I forgot to mention earlier was a bike trailer. You can, in the last couple of years, I've seen good trailers. Sometimes the trailers used to, bike with kids, that you can put them in the trailer. So that type of trailer is very, very easy to find online used because the families, they want to get rid of that type of trailer after a while when the kids grow up. So you can just put your stuff in that trailer and just go. I mean, you don't need that way. You don't need panniers. You don't need that kind of specialized equipment. So that's also a possibility that people could explore.
Right. How do you deal with the rain? I remember when I was a teenager, I had a day when I don't know. I think I went 20 kilometers in the rain on the bike. And it was the worst day of my life, almost. So how does that work?
Yeah, I think you have to be like stoic about that. There's really no way to, when it's a rainy day, it's a rainy day. And I would make sure that my gear in my bags, in my panniers, would stay dry by using bags, plastic bags in them to put my stuff, because at the end of the day you want to have dry clothes. But during the day you just suffer through it. I mean, even if you have rain gear, it might keep you warm, but after not even an hour, you'll be wet anyway because of the sweat and all that. So yeah, these days are not the most pleasant day. Hopefully it's not too cold. Although it can get pretty cold before you feel the cold on your bike. It can almost snow and you'll be okay because you're moving and you're exercising. But I think, yeah, there's, gloves and you have to make sure that you stay warm and you take breaks. Like you can stay in a cafe for an hour or two. But yeah, these days you can be pretty miserable. It's a good day to find a museum and hang out there.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. And I'm sure you get more used to it as you do it as well.
Oh,
I can imagine.
yeah, your stamina kinds of develop, and you look at the map and oh yeah, okay, I want to see that, I want to go there, and you become, you become more better at dealing with that. But yeah, if you start and the first week, it's hard on the body, and on top of that it rains, yeah, you can be pretty miserable with that.
Yeah, I had that with my backpack because we walked a lot, of course, and because you wouldn't always catch a car or in the city or something like that. And the first week was just constant back pain, just really terrible. I was also packing way too much. That's another thing to pay attention to, but it's a rookie mistake. But after a week, it was okay. And then later in the trip, it was raining, it was cold, but we were pretty resilient. After some time, and it wasn't great, but you could deal with it.
Yeah, exactly.
How much do you think it would cost to get like all the equipment? Let's say you get it used.
Well, a bike would be not sure about the UK, but if for here you can get a bike maybe for $200 roughly if you use a used mountain bike, if you shop around, if you look for good deals online. And the panniers, I would imagine that they would maybe cost another $200 or $150.
Are they so expensive? I'm surprised.
Yeah, they're on the expensive side, especially if they are waterproof. The high-end models are waterproof, and that's good because sometimes it starts raining and you didn't expect it. So if they're not waterproof, you have to stop and make sure everything is okay, and everything inside your panniers are in a plastic bag, and then it stops raining. So you end up stopping and starting and stopping. So if the panniers are waterproof, that's an easier solution. But the good thing is, as I mentioned earlier, you can resell them if they're in good shape, probably for the price you paid to begin with. So these get, the value is good. It's like buying a Honda Civic and driving it and selling it a year later or two. So camping gear, well, I would try to find good deals and flea markets and that type of things. It doesn't really have to be super high-end specialized, just a little tent you can buy for less than $100 for sure. A little mattress, you can use blue foam and that type of mattress you can get for very little money. A headlamp is obviously very useful at night, and that's less than $20, maybe $10 if you shop online. So that type of gear, and if you want, it can be useful, many years down the road if you choose to do numerous trips like that. If you take good care of it, you'll have them almost forever. And yeah, that's basically the main cost associated with that. Of course, you need a basic understanding of how a bike works, but I didn't have a lot of gear problem, and you can always find a bike shop pretty much in any little town in Europe if you have a question or a problem, and people will help you there. That's one of the the good way of traveling in Europe. And also for me as a North American, traveling to Europe by bike it's so rewarding, because if you ride your bike, at 1,000 kilometers, you can see 4 countries or 3 countries, or even if you're in the same country, you'll see very, very different regions. And here the distances are so big that it can take a while to see something different. So to me, that's what's appealing in Europe and traveling by bike.
Oh, that's interesting. So even the geography is more varied?
Oh yeah, I mean in France, I mean you ride your bike for 100 kilometers, and people will give you food that they don't have in the previous region you were in. You should try this type of cheese, and you should try that, and so it's pretty rewarding to experience to do that, and also you notice that the joy that people have to tell and telling you about their region and about how it's so convenient to stay here because, we can take our car and we're 2 hours away from the beach and 2 hours away from this city. And then a week later, you're in another region and people will tell you, oh yeah, this region is so great because we have all this mountain sceneries and we have this river. And so to me, it was very, very exciting to see how people were excited about where they were living, and people find, people are more positive than we imagined them to be, just walking down the street and going about our daily life. So that was a good angle of the trip. Yeah.
Okay. Last question about the trip. So how much did the whole trip cost you? The 2 months total?
I would say less than $1,000. That's Canadian, so maybe $800 US, and that includes sometimes train tickets to go from point A to point B, to skip like a part of the countryside that was that people told me, oh yeah, you should take that train and do that, and I said, oh sure, okay. So it's not, and also I visited museums, saw movies, so it could have been a cheaper trip for sure. It was not, since I knew I had a limited amount of time. I didn't force myself into saving every last penny. But yeah, I think that's the ballpark area of what it cost.
Yeah, that is very it's very impressive. I mean, that doesn't include your flight.
No, obviously, yeah, that's
flight.
Yeah, the flight is the most expensive part of the trip. But I don't think I paid for lodging for one night, or no, not even, because even when I got back to Paris, I had an address. People tell me, oh yeah, my cousin lives there, and then I ended up staying there. So you make all these connections along the way, and it's crazy how it works. I think maybe the fact that I was by myself, I was alone. It's kind of easier sometimes to make connections with people, and if you're just by yourself, people will say, yeah, come over for, we're having dinner, you come inside. And I don't know, I haven't done it with another person. So sometimes maybe people think that since you're a couple or you're two person, you're kind of more independent and you want your privacy. And maybe if you're one person, you're maybe more lonely, so they will invite you over. I'm not sure how that works exactly, but I found that it opened a lot of doors, and just asking, just being there.
Yeah, it's really impressive to me that it's significantly cheaper than just living, even quite frugally, somewhere. So actually, with something like this, or the hitchhiking, or some of these alternative solutions, you can actually travel for less than what it would take to live in, where you normally live. It's very exciting, because that means that either you can save up pretty quickly for something like this because it's so cheap, and then take some time off, Or if you can earn money, on the go, or you're financially independent or whatever, then yeah, you can substitute your normal living costs plus live this great adventure. And I'm sure it's not many people would like to do this for a lifetime, but it definitely would be a great experience to have.
Yeah, you can see a lot and spend very little and ending up spending very little. I mean, when people invite you for dinner, and that means the food you bought you still have it the next day, and you can as I mentioned earlier, you just go to a supermarket, buy the cheapest thing you can find. I mean, it's you end up spending almost no money at all.
Nicolas' story has left me with a lot to think about. That it's not unreasonable to say that adventure is truly a matter of creativity and daring, and not really of money. That we often underestimate the kindness of strangers and thus miss out on opportunities that could really positively influence our outlook on species in general. That for the cost of a fancier gym membership, you could do what Nicolas did and make getting in shape and staying active an organic part of your life rather than a jarring interruption of the day in a sterile and artificial environment. You may think that this kind of stuff is not something that you can do, that there's no way that you could take the break or convince your family or bike the distance. To that I say, it's up to you. If this sounds like an adventure worth remembering, you can make it happen. If you have any questions on the subject, please post them in the comments section of this episode at valiantgrowth.com/48. Nicolas assured me that he'd be very happy to give you some pointers to get you on the road. I was also interested in hearing Nicolas' tactics for staying frugal given his different life station and circumstances, and that will be the subject of our next episode. Thank you for listening to Valiant Growth, and I dare you to flourish today. Nicolas' story has left me with a lot to think about. That it's not unreasonable to say that adventure is truly a matter of creativity and daring, and not really of money. That we often underestimate the kindness of strangers and thus miss out on opportunities that could really positively influence our outlook on species in general. That for the cost of a fancier gym membership, you could do what Nicolas did and make getting in shape and staying active an organic part of your life rather than a jarring interruption of the day in a sterile and artificial environment. You may think that this kind of stuff is not something that you can do, that there's no way that you could take the break or convince your family or bike the distance. To that I say, it's up to you. If this sounds like an adventure worth remembering, you can make it happen. If you have any questions on the subject, please post them in the comments section of this episode at valiantgrowth.com/48. Nicolas assured me that he'd be very happy to give you some pointers to get you on the road. I was also interested in hearing Nicolas' tactics for staying frugal given his different life station and circumstances, and that will be the subject of our next episode. Thank you for listening to Valiant Growth, and I dare you to flourish today.